Love doesn't leave first, respect does. You can still love someone, still feel that pull, still want them to be happy, still care about what happens to them, and while simultaneously losing every ounce of respect for who they are, how they show up, the choices they make, the person they have become or maybe always were, but you are only now allowing yourself to see clearly. And once respect is gone, once you have crossed that invisible line where you can no longer admire them, trust their judgment, or believe in their character, the love that remains becomes this painful, useless thing. Like being hungry but unable to eat. Now I want you to think about something honestly. When you look at your partner, do you still respect them? By looking at your partner, do you still respect them? Not love them. I'm not asking about love. Because love is stubborn. Love hangs on long after it should. Love will cling to the memory of who someone used to be or the fantasy of who they could become. But respect, and I'm talking about here the actual respect, the kind of respect that makes you trust their decisions, value their opinion, admire how they move through the world. Because here is what most people don't even realize. See, you can lose respect so gradually, so quietly that you don't even notice it's happening. Until one day you are arguing with them about something and you hear yourself think, I don't respect you. And it shocks you. Not because it's not true, but because you didn't realize it had gotten that bad. So you remember when we talked about someone checking out emotionally? Well, this is often what happens right before that. They lose respect for you. And once that's gone, emotional investment becomes almost impossible. Because how do you stay engaged with someone you fundamentally don't respect? So by the end of this video, you will understand exactly when and how respect leaves, why it's so much more devastating than the loss of love, and what it means for the future of your relationship. So let me tell you about Nina and Chris. And I really want you to pay attention to this because this pattern is everywhere once you learn to recognize it. Nina came to see me alone first, which is usually significant. She sat down and said something I have heard in different variations, probably 50 times. I still love him, but I don't like him anymore. Now, pay attention to the words. And I asked her, what's the difference? What not liking him actually meant in practice. She said, I used to think he was one of the most capable people I knew. He was smart, decisive, he handled problems, he showed up when things got hard. And over the years, I have watched him become someone who complains constantly but does nothing, who has an opinion about everything but takes action on nothing, who talks about his values but doesn't actually live them. And I don't respect him anymore. I don't know how to be married to someone I don't respect. And here's what got me. She started crying when she said, not because she was angry, not because she hates him, but because losing respect for someone you love is one of the most disorienting emotional experience a human being can have. It's actually discovering that the ground you have been standing was never actually solid. You were just pretending it was because the alternative was too terrifying to consider. So when Chris came in for a joint session, I asked him if he knew Nina had lost respect for him. He looked genuinely confused. He said, I don't think that's true. We still love each other. We still have a good relationship. And Nina just started staring at him with this look of complete exhaustion. Like she had tried so many times to tell him and he just couldn't hear it. And she said quietly that I do love you, but I don't respect you. I don't know how much longer I can do this. So here's what happens when respect leaves the relationship. The love doesn't disappear. It doesn't disappear immediately. It lingers. It haunts you. It makes you feel crazy because you still care about this person. You still want to do good things for that person. You still feel that bond. But you also can't respect how they live. can't trust their judgment, can't admire their choices. And living with that contradiction, loving someone you don't respect, that's absolutely soul destroying. John Gottman, very, very famous psychologist, in all his research on what makes relationships succeed or failed, found that contempt is the single greatest predictor of divorce. And he defines contempt as the moment when you start viewing your partner from a position of moral superiority, when you stop seeing them as flawed but trying. And that shift from we are in this together to I am better than you, that's the moment respect dies. And once it's dead, it's almost over. It never comes back. So what this really looks like in real life, and here is how you know respect has left your relationship. There are patterns, and you really need to know those patterns. Pattern number 1, you can't take their advice seriously. They offer an opinion about something important, a decision you are making, a problem you are facing, and you nod and say that I'll think about it. But internally, you have already dismissed it. Not because they are necessarily wrong, but because you don't trust their judgment anymore. You don't value their perspective. You fundamentally don't believe they have the wisdom or insight to guide you through anything complex. I had a client named Marcus who told me that my wife asked me why I never ask her opinion about work stuff anymore. And I didn't know how to tell her because I watched her make terrible decisions in her own life for years. And I just don't trust her judgment about anything important. Then there is pattern number 2. You are embarrassed by them. Not in a superficial way, not about the way they wear or how they talk, but embarrassed by their character, by how they treat people, by their lack of integrity, by the gap between who they pretend to be or who they actually are. When you are with other people, you find yourself subtly distancing from them, making it clear that their behavior doesn't represent you, that you are not aligned with their choices even though you are married to them. So there is actually a fascinating research from UCLA's Naomi Eisenberg on social pain. She found out that the brain regions that light up when we experience social rejection or embarrassment are the same ones that process physical pain. So when you are embarrassed by your partner's behavior, your brain is literally experiencing a form of pain. It's not just discomfort, it's neurological distress. Pattern number 3, you stop defending them. Someone criticizes them, a friend, a family member, even just in your own mind. And instead of defending them, instead of explaining context or giving them the benefit of doubt, you just agree or you stay silent or you think, yeah, that's right. And that moment when you stop being your partner's defender and start being their critique, that's when you know the respect is gone. The social psychologist Arthur Aron did a groundbreaking research on something he calls self-explanation in relationships. He found that healthy couples see their partners as source of growth, novelty, and expansion of self. But when respect dies, the opposite happens. Your partner becomes a source of contraction. You actively avoid incorporating their perspective because you don't want to be influenced by someone you don't respect. Then comes pattern number 4. Their weaknesses stop being endearing. Early in relationships, you see your partner's flaws and you think that's just part of who they are. Everyone has weaknesses. And you feel affectionate towards them even in their imperfection. But when respect dies, those same weaknesses become contemptible. You stop seeing them as human limitations and you start seeing them as character defects, as evidence of something fundamentally wrong with them as a person. A very famous philosopher, Alain de Botton, writes about this very beautifully. He says that love makes us generous interpreters of behavior. We create charitable narratives about why someone does what they do. And when respect leaves, we become very prosecutorial interpreters. We prosecute them. Every action becomes evidence of their inadequacy. Every mistake becomes proof of their unworthiness. Then comes pattern number 5. You have stopped bragging about them. You used to mention their accomplishments. You tell stories about how smart they are, feel proud when they succeeded, and now you don't. Not because they have stopped achieving things, but because their achievements don't impress you anymore. You see the person behind the accomplishments, and you know all those ways they fell short, all the compromises they made, all the credit they took that wasn't really theirs. And you can't muster genuine pride for someone you fundamentally don't respect. There's a research from the University of Rochester by Harry Rees. I think that's the name. And research was on perceived partner responsiveness. He found out that one of the strongest predictors of relationship satisfaction is whether you believe your partner truly understands, validates, and cares for you. But here's what's interesting. The inverse is also true. When you stop believing in your partner's capacity for genuine understanding and insight, when you stop respecting their judgment, your ability to feel satisfied in the relationship plummets, even if the love is still there. So the question is, why this happens psychologically? Why does respect leave before love? It comes down to what I call the difference between attachment and admiration. There's mechanism number 1, love as attachment, respect as evaluation. Love in its most fundamental form is about attachment. It's about bonding, about nervous system recognizing someone as mine, about history, about shared experience, and the deep biological drive to maintain connection. And attachment is incredibly resilient. It doesn't disappear just because someone disappoints you or fails you to meet your standards. But respect is different. That's different. Respect is evaluative. It's based on observation, on watching someone's behavior over time and making a judgment about their character, their competence, their integrity. And unlike attachment, which is emotional and irrational and stubborn, respect is logical and evidence-based and very, very fragile. A very famous psychologist, Robert Sternberg, who developed the triangular theory of love, talks about how love has three components. Intimacy, passion, and commitment. But he doesn't include respect because respect isn't actually part of love. It's a separate evaluation that exists alongside love. And you can have all three components of love while having zero respect. And that's when relationships become toxic. When you are deeply attached to someone who fundamentally don't admire. Then comes mechanism number 2. The accumulation of micro-betrayals. Respect doesn't usually leave in one dramatic moment. It erodes through 1,000 small disappointments, each one barely noticeable in its own, but culminative in their effect. Until one day, you look at your partner and realize you don't trust them to do the right thing, to make good decisions, to be the person they claim to be, because they have shown you over and over again in small ways that they won't. Paul Zak, a very famous neuroscientist who studies trust and oxytocins, found something very fascinating. Trust isn't built through grand gestures. It's built through consistent, reliable, small acts of integrity. And it's destroyed the same way, not through one big betrayal necessarily, but through the accumulation of small moments where someone showed you they are not who they said they were. Your brain keeps a running tally. And eventually, the evidence overwhelms the hope. So you must know the lie that you keep on telling to yourself, the lie that keeps you trapped, the ghost belief. And here it is, the ghost belief. Love is enough. But it's not. Love without respect is just attachment to someone you have outgrown, or someone who's relieved themselves to be fundamentally incompatible with your values. And staying in a relationship where you love someone but don't respect them is a particular kind of torture. Because you can't leave cleanly, you can't just walk away because the love keeps you pulling back even as the lack of respect makes you miserable. And here's what nobody tells you. You cannot respect someone you don't fundamentally admire. You cannot maintain a healthy long-term relationship with someone you don't respect, because respect is what allows you to trust their decisions, to value their input, to see them as an equal partner rather than someone you need to manage, correct, or work around. The existential psychologist Rollo May wrote about this. He said, respect comes from the Latin reciprocity, which means to look back at, to regard. So he said real respect requires seeing someone clearly, not through the distortion of neediness or fantasy, but as they actually are, and being able to admire what you see. And if you look at your partner clearly and can't admire what's there, the relationship is already over. You are just waiting for the love to catch up with the respect already knows. So there has to be some exit path, of course. What actually matters now? So what do you do when respect has left but love remains? The respect inventory. Tonight, make a list. Actually, write it down. I want you to write it down. The qualities you respect in people, the characteristics you admire, the behaviors you value, and then honestly assess whether your partner embodies those things. And if the answer is no, if you realize you are with someone whose character you fundamentally don't admire, you need to stop lying to yourself about what that matters. What do you do this week? Test if it's fixable. Tell your partner directly that I need to be honest with you. I have realized I have lost respect for you, not because of one thing, but because of patterns I have watched over time. And I need you to understand that this isn't about love. I still care about you, but respect is non-negotiable for me. And I need to see real change, not promises of change, but actual different behavior over time. You know, their response will tell you everything. Do they get defensive and make it about how you are being too harsh? Or do they take responsibility and ask that what they can do differently? And if nothing changes, then that's the hard truth. If after 60 days you still don't respect them, if you still can't trust their judgment, you can't admire their choices, you can't feel proud of who they are, then you need to accept that love without respect is not enough. That you cannot build a life with someone you fundamentally don't respect, and the kindest thing you can do is let both of you go find partners you can actually admire. Please do that. Look, I know how confusing it is to love someone you don't respect, to feel that attachment, that care, that bond, while simultaneously knowing in your bones that this person is not someone you admire. That this person is not someone whose judgment you trust, not someone who you can actually build a life with. And here's what you need to understand. Respect isn't optional in relationships. It's not something you can compromise on or work around. Because you know, without respect, you can't have a true partnership. You can't have equality. You can't have the kind of relationship where you actually trust each other to navigate life together. And if respect is gone, if you have watched your partner over years and concluded that their character, their choices, their way of being in the world is not something you can admire, then the love that remains is just the ghost of what you hoped this relationship would be. And staying doesn't honor that love. It just prolongs the inevitable. If you love them but don't respect them, just comment no respect. You're not cruel for feeling this. You are honest. So be honest with yourself. If this video felt personal, it's because it touched a pattern, not a personality. Clarity doesn't tell you what to do. It helps you stop lying to yourself. This is Season 1, The Collapse Arc, and I'll see you in the next episode.